Good morning and welcome to our webinar hosted by the Grants Management Office and as part of our Wyoming Grants Assistance Program, or WYGAP. We are excited to focus today on assessing and achieving grant readiness for nonprofit organizations. For those of you who don't know me, I am Drew Palmer, the Grants Integration Manager for Governor Mark Gordon. Let me introduce our team real quickly. First, with the State Budget Department, we have Christine Immiger, who is our grants administrator. Also with the State Budget Department is Diana Cabrielas, who is the grants deputy administrator for the Grants Management Office program. And finally, with our team at Haggerty Consulting, we have Val Craven, a grant strategist, Michelle Rogers, a grant advisor, and Abby Trimmel is in the back working things behind the scenes, but certainly wanted to recognize her. Before we get started, let's review a few housekeeping items. This presentation will be recorded. Please keep your devices muted unless you are speaking. There will be time at the end of the presentations for questions. You are welcome to put questions in the Q&A below, or you can raise your hand and we will call on you. We would appreciate it if you would turn your camera on to speak. Please enter your name, title, organization, or local government you represent in the chat. And we will be posting the recording and the slide deck of this presentation on the Grants Management Office website at sbd.wyo.gov/grants. So for those of you that are just joining us for the first time, the Grants Management Office officially launched on July 8th of last year and is housed in the State Budget Department. This resource is being stood up to assist state agencies, local communities, tribal governments and organizations, nonprofits, and small businesses to build capacity over time and provide additional resources to apply for state and federal grants. It is the expectation that this effort will assist in laying the foundation for a viable solution in meeting the technical assistance and resource needs of our communities long term. The overarching goal of the Grants Management Initiative is to create a one-stop shop for resources related to federal and state grant opportunities and working to identify stacking and grading options, including IRA or other tax credit programs and direct pay, if applicable, to maximize benefits to our state and local communities. So today we are going to explore what it looks like for nonprofits to be grant ready, discuss how nonprofits can assess their own grant readiness, and share strategies for building internal capacity. We have a lot to share with you, so let's get started. I am now going to turn the presentation over to Christine with the Grants Management Office to kick us off. Christine.
Hey, Drew, thanks very much for those housekeeping items and getting us going today on our webinar. We're pretty excited, and we like to start our webinars with a quick poll to assess the landscape of who we might be speaking to today. So very quickly, for those of you that are in attendance today, how prepared do you believe your organization is to apply and manage grant funds? A is going to be very prepared, that 90 to 100% threshold. B, somewhat prepared, around 50 to that 90%, or C, not prepared, which is that 0 to 50%. And we're going to have that poll pop up on our screen, and we're going to wait a few moments for everybody to be able to answer it. All right, Haggerty, I'm going to look to you to see if we can get the results, maybe, if everyone has been able to select a thing. Okay, so about 41% of you said that you're very prepared, that your organization likely has the necessary skills and capacity. 49% of you said you're somewhat prepared. Some organizations may be lacking some of the necessary skills or capacity. And there's around 11% that says that the organization they are within faces significant challenges. And that is okay, because our presentation today is going to be geared towards those different things. And we're going to show you some tips and tricks of the trade of grants management. So next slide, please. Real quickly, Drew spoke about the Grants Management Initiative. It is supported by the State Budget Department, where the Grants Management Office is located. And both Diana and I work very closely with Drew, along with our Haggerty consulting firm, who is very well versed in grants management. This is a small glimpse of our organizational chart as we continue these webinars and we conduct outreach and we go to different grant management presentations. We further expand our network. So those individuals that are listed here today, we are helping support them almost every single day in the state of Wyoming. We have something called the Wyoming IWG, the Interworking Group, and that is a panel of state and federal partners that meet every other Thursday at 11 o'clock. If you're interested in attending that Wyoming IWG, you would like to listen in to some of the Wyoming specific opportunities that are flagged for us, please join us. Send the spd-grants@wyo.gov an email address, and we will get you added to that attendance list. Next slide, please. Real quickly, the Wyoming Grants Management Office, as I spoke before, it is housed in the State Budget Department, but we knew right off the bat during our hard launch that we needed to get some items in place. One of those was launching the Wyoming Grants Connect Hub. And you heard Drew Palmer speak about the one-stop shop, and that is where you can go to locate Wyoming-specific grant opportunities across federal and state organizations. We did this so that we could increase transparency within the state of Wyoming on those federal and state grant programs. Sometimes when you go to grants.gov, sometimes when you go to our State Department websites, some of those opportunities are buried in there, or you really have to filter and you have to search and try to find the ones that are very valuable or meet or align with the priorities of your organization, and it gets a little hard. So we created the Wyoming Grants Connect Hub, and right now there's more than 401 opportunities out there on that hub. One of the other things that we knew is that we needed to identify some of the needs of the state agencies and the local governments. We want to make sure that whenever we're presenting a grant opportunity or a funding mechanism for your project, that it aligns with your organization or your community's priorities. We are not here to tell you what to do. We're simply here to just try to find funding mechanisms and other sources of federal funds and state funds so that we can federally stack and braid those opportunities to meet your project's overall goal. And last but not least, we are here to make sure that we are building the knowledge and the skills and the abilities for grant writing and grant management within the boundaries of Wyoming. And that at the end of the day, that will help us identify specific opportunities, write eligible grant applications to secure that federal funding, and manage those funds throughout the audit and the closeout cycle of the grants management life cycle and those dollars. I'm now going to pass it to Michelle, and she is going to give us an overview about our webinar objectives today.
Thanks, Christine. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you. I definitely see some names I recognize in the chat, so welcome. Good to chat with you all again. So today, as Drew mentioned, we're going to talk all about nonprofits. I will say, a lot of these concepts apply to other types of organizations. So if you're not a nonprofit, don't run away. I think there's still some valuable information we're going to talk about today, but just know that this is mostly tailored for our nonprofit partners. So today we're going to talk about what it looks like to be grant ready in the nonprofit space. We're going to talk about how to determine your current level of grant readiness. So we've got a grant readiness rubric, kind of a checklist thing that we're going to go over, and Val's going to talk about that and do some screen sharing. And that tool will be shared on our website, so you all can print it out, go through it yourselves, talk about it with your team, talk about it with your board, so you will have access to that tool. And so we're going to feature that today, and then I'll talk a little bit about some strategies that you all can work on to build some capacity to be grant ready. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Val to kick us off. Val, you are muted.
All right, thank you, Michelle. All right, I get to share with you identifying grant readiness. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first question, what is grant readiness? Grant readiness is a measure of how prepared you are to apply for and manage grant funds. So you need to be prepared for the life cycle of a grant before you apply for a grant. It's a very important step, and it's often one that people skip over and just start applying for grants. So pausing at the beginning before you start applying for grants and determining and pulling together the documents and information that you need to be grant ready is very, very important before you start applying. So what does grant readiness entail? It looks at your internal capacity. It looks at your financial capacity. It looks at your monitoring processes, both for finances and for performance capability. It looks at how well you communicate and coordinate between your team members and with external stakeholders. And then it looks at how your executive and your community support supports the work and the programs and the projects that you want to apply for grant funding for. Next slide. So what does it look like? It is to help your organization feel confident that it can accomplish, at a minimum, every major task that is required at all stages of the grant life cycle. So what it is not, it's not, we're going to figure this out. We're going to apply for this grant and we'll figure it out. It's not that. Grant readiness is very much, we know exactly how to approach this. We have done our research. We know exactly what we need. We are prepared to now start looking for grants that will fulfill our funding needs. Next slide. All right, we're going to walk through each phase of the grant life cycle and look at the grant readiness steps or things you should think about as you go through each phase of the cycle. So we're going to go through the pre-award phase, the award phase, the post-award phase, and then the closeout phase. So starting in the first phase, the pre-award phase, I'm going to go counterclockwise in this diagram. And you can see how you start with assessing your budget and your financial needs, of course. You're looking for funding. That's the point of your grant application. You need to stop and prepare and gather all your required documentation. So is likely your financial statements, it's your audit statements, it's having information about your board, it's having information about your past funders, things that you're going to need to fill out your grant application and have all that gathered in one spot before you start applying. It's preparing and gathering organizational information. Like I said, your board information, your staffing information, often the demographics of your board and your staffing that can be important for filling out grant applications. Again, just gathering all that before you get started. It's then sitting back and assessing your internal capacity. Can we do this? Do we have the team members who can prepare a grant application, who can execute a grant, who can do the follow-up of a grant, the compliance phase at the end? And then it's the fun part of researching and identifying actual funding opportunities. And then preparing a tailored grant application that fits to the funder's interests and requirements to match your funding needs with the funder's priorities in their awarding, and then submitting the grant application. And that's the steps to think of as you do the pre-award phase for your grant application. Next slide. Now you've been awarded the grant. Congratulations. What are the steps you have to think about as you walk through this phase of your grant life cycle? And in particular, be ready for this as you're preparing in your grant readiness phase. So you review your grant award documentation, very important. Your grant award documentation can very much look like the NOFO, the information that they put, the funder put in the funding opportunity, but sometimes there is a lot more detail and specifics that are really important when you're reviewing the actual award documentation. And the award documentation is what you have to follow to successfully fulfill the grant. So it's very important to stop and take time to read the actual award documentation. And then you want to sit and hold some kickoff meetings with your staff and your stakeholders. Super important step to think about doing is to get everybody up to speed on the expectations, on what needs to be fulfilled, on the timelines, what have you. And then you get the fun part of actually implementing your project or your program that you've been awarded funding for. Next slide. Post-award phase. So things to think about. You should have prepared a performance monitoring method. So funders like monitoring, of course, they have metrics, rubrics, metrics that you have to obtain to show that you are performing all of the aspects of the project or program, that you're hitting all the milestones that you proposed in your grant application. And you have to monitor that and be prepared to monitor that. So having that, thinking of that before you apply for the grant and having it ready, that you know how you're going to monitor and keep track of that over the grant life cycle is very important. Similarly, funders like to know, and they like reporting periodically on how you're spending their money. So preparing a financial tracking system, making sure that you have that set up before you apply to make sure you know that you can, again, hit your funding milestones that you have proposed in your grant application is very important. So performance measures and financial tracking system, very, very important. And you're also going to have to perform periodic reporting. Just giving the funder updates, they'll tell you what they require. Is it quarterly? Is it monthly? Is it a final report that you need to prepare? That will be all part of your award documentation. And very important is you need to track all of your expenses. Again, funders like to know how the money is being spent, and transparency is key to them. So making sure you're tracking all of the relevant expenses to the project or program. And again, communicating with the funder regularly. It is a relationship that you're building with your funder. And in whatever capacity that they're asking for, regular communication is very important. Like we said, is it forms of reports or emails or what have you, to make sure you're staying in touch so that they're aware of that you're hitting your milestones, that you're meeting your performance metrics, that you're meeting your funding requirements. And again, important, meet all your deadlines. Very, very important, both financially, performance metrics, reporting, that's very important. And finally, follow all state and federal guidelines, both in executing your project and in meeting the financial aspects for the funder. So making sure that you're following, if they're using, if it's a federal grant and it's falling under the uniform guidance, to make sure that you're following all the requirements for the potential auditing and what have you steps. Next slide. And the closeout phase. You will be required in some capacity to prepare a final financial reporting and a performance reporting to show the funder and demonstrate to the funder that you have used the funds appropriately and have accomplished the performance metrics that you laid out. And very important is that you have good record keeping and follow the requirements either of that's laid out by the funder and or state and federal requirements in terms of how long, what types of records you need to keep. In particular, if there's an auditing phase of the grant award too. And then the kind of fun part is in the closeout phase is stopping, taking a breather, and thinking about what you learned about that grant application, about that project, about the closeout, the post-performance phase, about the closeout phase. What have you learned? What worked? What didn't work? And what can you learn and take forward for future opportunities? And then the other fun part is also capturing and telling the program success stories. So in the form of maybe testimonies of the people that you've reached, storytelling in any way that you can capture how your program has impacted the population that you were serving is a great fun activity and important to capture at the end of a program. Next. Okay, so how do you assess grant readiness? You think you're ready? How do we do this? And who does this? So typically, grant readiness is a great step to do if you're a new nonprofit or you're about to apply for your first grant. You're ready. You think you're ready. Okay, pause. And let's go through these grant readiness steps to make sure that you have all the systems in place and everybody's buy-in and all the team members and the stakeholders involved that you need to successfully execute the grant. The other groups who might be interested or perform a grant readiness is nonprofits who want to make your application process more efficient. Maybe it's been a little clunky in the past, and it might be a good time to pause and think through each of the steps. Or if you're launching a new program or a new initiative that you haven't really thought about and just thought about how you're going to capture those performance metrics, or what performance metrics you're going to capture, how you're going to build it into your budget, what have you. Next slide. Okay, so what are some red flags as you're starting to walk through your grant readiness procedure? Some of them, lack of support, either from the community, especially the community you're trying to serve, the lack of support maybe from your executive boards or your team members, your staff, or if you have no existing partnerships as with a workforce development program, if you haven't established partnerships perhaps with industries that you might be serving, or local community colleges or what have you, to kind of build into your workforce development program, that's a good place to pause and maybe think about establishing some of those partnerships that may be of interest and required by some of the funders in the grant application. If you have insufficient or outdated technology for capturing performance metrics or financial metrics, that can be a red flag. Or again, poor financial management system, insufficient staffing. You have a great idea and you have a great program, but you don't have anybody to execute. That can be a red flag. Or you don't have the staffing to actually fill out or do the grant application process. That can be a red flag. Also, untrained or inexperienced staff, or high staff turnover, poor internal communication. Again, no established record keeping system can be a red flag. Might be time to pause and stop and form a policy on how you, what records you keep, how long you keep them, information like that. If you don't have a clear project or program goals, those should be established before you start to apply for grants. Take a moment, think about what are the goals? What are you trying to accomplish with this new project, with this new program? And outlining that, because those become your performance metrics that you'll use to measure the success of your grant. And disorganized grant research methods. In other words, it's better to formulate what you need and then go after the targeted grant applications that where your goals match those of the funder that you're going for. Next slide. So green flags, exact opposite essentially of all the red flags. Great, you're in a great position. If you have strong community engagement, you have a supportive board, you have supportive staff, you have strong existing partnerships with the community, with the people you're trying to serve, with the universities, with whomever is in your ecosystem of the service that you're providing. You have updated and efficient technology. You can keep track of your performance metrics. You can keep track of your financial information. Especially if you have a dedicated financial team or dedicated financial person, also quite helpful. You have sufficient staffing. You have somebody who can research, fill out, execute, follow up on your grant application. So likewise, experienced and trained staff in that, strong staff retention. People who are involved know your programming, know your processes, and can perform your new program initiative, what have you. Strong, open internal communication with your staff and your team. And organized record keeping system, again, very important. And clear and concise project and program goals. And I cannot emphasize that enough. Having clear goals is important, both for establishing your mission for your project and program, but also then to be able to outline, like I said, your performance metrics, and then show how you are meeting your performance metrics in a grant application. And a sustainable grant research methods. Again, if you take the time to figure out your needs, find funders who align with your needs, and that is the best option for identifying successful grants to apply for. Okay. So we have created a grant readiness rubric, which is kind of a checklist of things that we suggest that, or things that have been found to prepare and determine that you are ready to start applying for grants. So this is a kind of a starting point. So to give yourself pause, think through your organization, think through your strengths and your weaknesses, and maybe point out some of those and determine whether or not you're ready to apply for a grant. Next slide. So I'm going to share the rubric in a minute, but just to show you how we designed the rubric, we have for each indicator, you're going to evaluate your organization's status. Are you ready? Not ready? In progress? And then each of those gets a score, 0, 1, or 2, because some of us like to do a little bit of math and have fun with that. So next slide. And then you'll, just like a typical rubric, you add up the scores for each section, you add up the subtotals for the total score. Our rubric nicely adds up to 50. And then based on how your scoring is, can give you kind of an indication of whether or not your organization may be grant ready. Maybe you need some capacity building to happen before you apply, or you're on your way. Let's do it. Okay, so I am now going to share my screen of the grant readiness rubric. And as Michelle said, we're going to have this available on our website so that you can pull it down and spend more time with it. I'm just going to go over it pretty quickly just to give you an idea of some of how it works and some of the topics that are on it. So again, there's the steps, the directions on how to use it. I won't go through that in much detail. Just much like the slides we just went through. So this is the rubric itself. So by subcategory, here's readiness to apply for grant funding. How are you in your grant planning and writing capacity? Does your organization have the necessary registrations? You're applying for a federal grant. Do you have your UEI established already? Do you have your key decision makers engaged in the grant planning and pursuit process? And that was our communication aspect we talked about earlier. Under the program and project readiness, is your program or project clearly defined, including scope, objectives, and expected outcomes? Does your project have the stakeholder support, and is it clearly connected to community needs? Again, you would select 0, 1, 2, add up subtotal for each section. I'm going to keep going. We have more sections. Readiness to manage grant funding. So do you have implementation capacity? If you get the grant, can you implement it? Does your organization have the necessary staff, expertise, and resources to actually implement the project? Are the necessary agreements in place, like your MOUs, your contracts, your subrecipient agreements, things that you'll need to be able to execute? Sometimes funders require those before you are awarded in your application or before you're awarded the grant. So having those in place and having that communication happen with your stakeholders and your partners is important before you apply. Compliance and performance management. So you've been awarded, when you get awarded the grant, do you have dedicated staff with the grant management experience or access to external grant managers if needed? If you don't have staff on who can perform those tasks, do you have a consultant or some external grant manager that you can rely on to execute your grant? Is there a system for managing contracts and subawards, including contractors and subrecipients? I'm just going through some of the examples on here on this, things to think about. And like I said, we'll share so you can spend more time with each of it. But as I said, you would score 0, we're not quite ready. 1, we're pretty ready. 2, we got this. And then add that up, subtotal each section. And like I said, our checklist conveniently adds up to 50. So you can then assess, I'm going to scroll back up, your grant readiness. And I think that's it for me. I'm going to pass it back to Michelle.
Thanks, Val. All
You're
right,
welcome.
like we've got our PowerPoint back up. Let me move this over here so I can see what we're working with. All righty, so thank you, Val, again for walking us through the grant readiness rubric. It's a great tool. I'm excited for you all to use it. Like we said, that'll be up on the website so you can take a look at it. So in our final bit of time together, I'm going to walk us through some strategies that nonprofits can take to build internal capacity to become grant ready. All right, so if you completed the grant readiness rubric and you find that you have some areas to work on, that is okay, right? So there are a lot of capacity building strategies that we can work on to begin to move the needle in the right direction. And I'll also note here that just because you didn't score perfectly doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't apply for grants. I want to make that very clear. So this is really just a tool that frames grant readiness best practices. And a lower score means that there are some areas that your organization can work on as you build that capacity to secure and manage grants. So what is capacity building and why is it important? I'm sure you've heard the name. I'm sure you've probably, some of you have requested TA already. We've already been working on some of these things together. So as you can see on the screen, it's defined as whatever is needed to bring a nonprofit to the next level of operational, programmatic, financial, or organizational maturity so that you can more effectively and efficiently advance your mission. So I love this description because I worked in capacity building for years, and this is exactly how I would describe it. It is whatever is needed. So it's a really broad term that encompasses any work that you all are doing, and you're probably already doing some of this work to really strengthen your organization's operations, fiscal sustainability, and your programmatic delivery. And as Christine mentioned at the onset of this webinar, one of the key goals of the Grants Management Office is to support organizations like yourself to build that knowledge base within the boundaries of Wyoming to effectively secure federal funding and manage that funding. So we're really focused on building this lasting capacity among nonprofits like yourselves and communities across Wyoming to plan for, pursue, execute, and manage grants. So capacity building really focuses on building that knowledge, skills, and abilities, whatever they are, needed to effectively do this work. Okay, so now let's briefly discuss some of the few key challenges that you all are more than aware of on a day-to-day basis. Then we'll talk about some strategies to mitigate some of these challenges. So you all face many challenges every day in completing your missions. We know this, including limited financial resources, networks, staff resources, and maybe some outdated processes. So why are these areas important as it relates to grant readiness, and what can we do to work on that? So for financial resources, because nonprofits often operate using grants and donations, it's sometimes difficult to invest in grant writing and management training for staff unless it's a part of a grant or for free. And it may be difficult to hire staff as most staff roles in nonprofits are tied to specific programmatic activities. So that's kind of a big challenge. In terms of networks, nonprofits are often not able to pay for marketing costs, right, outside of existing grants. And so sometimes nonprofits focus too narrowly on partnerships that are closely tied to their specific area, which can limit networking and partnership development opportunities that could go more broadly. For staff resources, with most nonprofit staff juggling multiple roles and programs and activities that are really focused on delivering the mission, sometimes enhancing grant writing and management capacities that kind of falls by the wayside. We're focused on doing the mission, and sometimes that just isn't a priority. And then some outdated processes. So I know that many nonprofits are only able to secure maybe updated technology through either like a flexible grant or a donation. And often our nonprofits are operating with donated technology, which can sometimes be inefficient. So we know what our challenges are. So let's talk about some solutions to support these challenges. Okay, so for financial resources, I cannot emphasize this enough. Nonprofit sustainability really can only be achieved by diversifying funding streams. Nonprofits should avoid focusing on one funding stream or one type of activity and really incorporate a variety of funding streams into the organization's revenue model to allow for more flexibility in how funds can be used that are still aligned with your mission. So for example, if you have a staff member whose salary is covered in whole by a grant, that puts your organization at a risk for losing that staffer when the grant ends. So nonprofits should focus on covering salaries, for example, using several funding streams where possible for the different activities that that staffer is working on, particularly for core staff like directors and managers and those writing and managing your grants. Taking advantage of free resources is a great strategy. We'd love to hire an external consultant when we can, but that's not always realistic. So nonprofits are known for their resourcefulness. So this isn't a surprise, using free resources. So if you need to use a resource that isn't free, try to use that resource on a temporary basis or for a specific need, and then learn from that experience in using that resource to grow your capacity to then go on to do that work yourself. That's a great strategy. And then reassessing your budget. So take a look at how your budget is currently being used and decide if it can be reallocated to better serve some of your organizational needs. So nonprofits should at least annually assess the bottom line and how that is tracking against your strategic plan. And if it's not, you should have a discussion with your board. So as your organization grows and changes, your needs are going to change, and you may be able to refocus your limited operational costs that you're getting from donations, for example, to meet those specific needs. So you may be focusing on expanding to a new facility right now, but later on you may need to invest in some leadership development or grants management capacities. So taking a look at your budget and kind of aligning those priorities. All right, so networking, some strategies for networking. Strategic partnerships, as you all know, are a cornerstone of developing and managing grants effectively. So most grant applications require nonprofits to show that they have thoughtfully partnered with local organizations to perform whatever proposed work you have, including partnerships with your local governments and its agencies. So I feel like sometimes as nonprofits, we're in a bubble and we're going to propose to do all this work ourselves, but we forget that we should probably be partnering with our local governments or other local community members in alignment with their strategic plans as well. So funders want to see that your proposed projects will be mutually beneficial within your communities for all partners involved, especially for the community who the program is going to be serving, that those folks have been thoughtfully engaged before the project was developed. For networking as well, attending events and hosting events. So, and many conferences offer discounts for nonprofits. I'm sure you're aware of this. Assess which conferences are worth spending some of your spare funds that you have to support professional development related to grants management. I'm going to go ahead and put a plug in here for the funding summit for Wyoming. It is free, so we can put some information about in the chat and send the link to you all. That's a free event that you can attend. Definitely will be worth it. And additionally, a lot of conferences offer volunteer opportunities where volunteers can attend the conference for free because they volunteer. So leveraging opportunities like this where you really have something that you're trying to work on, and it may be worth attending events like that to build your networks. And then hosting events. So many of you already host community events. You are community partners and gatherers in your communities. So this is really important because we want to think critically about what you want to get out of that engagement that you're hosting. So you may be doing a specific activity for a grant, but how can we really leverage that opportunity in other ways? So how can we make a plan of action for that engagement? What do we want to get out of that community engagement? Maybe you'll be securing a new MOU with another partner. Maybe you're identifying a new potential partner. Maybe you're solidifying an existing relationship. Or maybe you're engaging a specific piece of your community that will eventually feed into a new proposed project for your organization. So using opportunities like this where you're hosting events as well is a great space to be intentional with your networking to build your networks. Okay, so staff resources, some strategies. So investing in staff professional development, really challenging, wearing many hats in the nonprofit space. So one way you can do this is by engaging with YGAP, for example, for technical assistance support. There's also lots of free resources out there like the Grant Summit. And there are some paid grant resources as well, some membership organizations out there for nonprofits. You can use these to have your staff, maybe if you can only afford to send one of them, have your staff attend and then go on to teach the other staff what they've learned. So really getting that information through your entire organization instead of letting it sit with one person. So depending on the training material you receive from trainings like this, you can share those resources with your teams as well. And that's a great way to build capacity internally amongst your teams. And then building strong leadership. So grantors want to know that your organization is stable and has the leadership capacity to implement the projects and programs that you are proposing in your grant applications. So consider how you are developing your top performers within your organization and plan some staff professional development trajectories for your teams. If you want certain staff, you've got some superstar change makers, you want them to take on responsibilities, you see them growing for a given grant, make a plan, talk with them about that. Talk about how you'll develop their knowledge, skills, and abilities to do the work that is required to administer the grant on the program side, but also on the program management side. And then, as Val mentioned, hiring experts where needed. So where this is feasible, you can hire for specific roles and that kind of thing, grant writers if possible. So where that's required, leveraging experts can help. All right, and then some strategies for internal processes. So modern software solutions and technology literacy. So in alignment with your organization's growth and strategic priorities, consider when it might be time to invest in a new technology or process. So we don't want to just get technology and processes just because it's new and exciting. We'd love to do that if we can, but that's not always possible. So a term I always like to tell folks from the Project Management Institute is the last responsible moment. So this is the moment where if you're hearing from your grantors that you maybe are non-compliant in certain areas, or maybe the way you're tracking things are not exactly where they should be, you're doing fine, but it could be better, such as tracking financial expenditures for multiple grants, for example, it might be time to upgrade. So we don't want to upgrade just because we want to upgrade because there's a need, but we also want to do it at the right responsible moment for that type of upgrade. And then technology literacy. So on the flip side of this, use of technology and processes should be realistic for our existing staff, while also encouraging those staff to grow alongside new technology innovations. And then efficiency. So most grants limit administrative costs. So you're going to want to ensure that your internal workflows and project management and grants management processes make sense. So where you have redundancies or pain points, explore options. Really take a dive and look at that. What are some options to modify those processes to make them more efficient across your grants in your organization? And you can leverage YGAP for help. So we can take a look at your processes and make recommendations for improvements and enhancements for grants management. So we're always a resource. Okay, so I finished my part here. So my other colleague, I'll go ahead and have her launch the poll here. So now that we've discussed the grant readiness rubric and some strategies to increase grant capacity, let's take another pulse on how you all are feeling about the question we talked about at the beginning of today's webinar. So after participating in today's session, how prepared do you believe your organization is to apply for and manage grant funds? And we'll give about a minute for y'all to answer that. And it's okay if it didn't change from the past 45 minutes. You guys can definitely take a look at that tool that we're going to put up on the website, the rubric. Think about your organization's capacity if you're grant ready. Maybe you thought you weren't ready. Maybe you thought you were grant ready, and maybe you're not as grant ready as you thought, but maybe you're doing better than you thought. So that'll be a helpful touch point. So looking at the results here, they did change a little bit from the first poll. So 40% of you do now feel very prepared, 49% somewhat prepared, and 11% not prepared. So chat with us. This is great feedback. If you're not prepared or maybe you have some areas to work on, reach out to YGAP. We'd love to help you get to whatever that next level is for your organization. All right, and I will kick it over to Drew and Abby to facilitate some Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Val and Michelle. Abby, let's move into Q&A. And please, if you've got any questions, you can put them in the Q&A or you can answer or you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. So Abby, what do we have so far?
Sure, let's kick it off with, do these grant readiness considerations also apply to organizations that are not nonprofits? And if so, do they differ at all?
Who would like to field that question? Val?
You want me to go? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. As Michelle said at the beginning, this is geared towards nonprofits, but it absolutely applies to everybody who is getting ready to apply for grants. It's always a good time before you start applying to take a beat, think about what you're trying to accomplish with the project or program or initiative that you're starting or doing, and think about how you're going to execute it, how you're going to report on it, so that you stay compliant, most importantly. So yes, it is. And how does it differ between nonprofits? Off the top of my head, I'd have to think about it, but I don't see a dramatic difference in the steps that we walked through, whether you're a nonprofit or a local government or what have you. They're broad enough that I think that they would apply to everybody, unless, Michelle, you can think of anything that's special, but off the top of my head, I can't. They're all steps that everybody should probably walk through and consider.
Thanks, Val. Abby, more questions.
Sure. Someone is asking how the new administration's policies will affect the future of nonprofit grant programs, if at all.
That has been a topic of conversation lately. So a great question. Christine, would you like to field that one?
Yeah, I think the general answer is we're going to have to wait for more information as things are hashed out at the federal level. There's been a couple court cases that have appeared in the last week or so. But if you attend our bi-weekly Wyoming IWG meeting, last Thursday, our federal partners said that they are diligently working on trying to get the information out there and constructed for people like us that have those questions. So I would say it's to be determined. We'll put a flag in it to make sure that we keep people apprised about this. And we are just waiting for more information. Drew, anything you would like to add to that?
No, well, I think what I would add, Christine, is the direction and the guidance, at least at this point, that we've received from our federal partners also is they're working through it. But I think if you look at some of the president's executive orders, they do specifically put a pause or a freeze on EJA, Infrastructure and Investment Job Act awards or Inflation Reduction Act awards. So what I would say is if you've got those two awards, or if those are awards that you're looking to submit a grant application, one, if you're in the grant application process, we would encourage you to just continue to get that done and submit by the deadline, get in the queue. Two, if you've got existing EJA or IRA awards that have been put on hold, that gets a little bit trickier, but if it's something specific you'd like to work through with us, we're happy to talk to you. Just contact us. And I think that the other thing is if you've got awards or you're working on grant programs that are outside of EJA and IRA, they may still be in play. So we would just encourage you to reach out to your federal partners, ask them the questions. You can reach out to us. We'll try to get answers for you. But there are still NOFOs being moved through the system. So it kind of just depends where your project, where your grant applications lie. But right now, the ones that are really in question in different phases are anything with EJA or IRA. So more questions, Abby.
Sure. Someone is asking, for some federal applications, we are asked to have a cognizant agency validate our costs. Do you have a way to get that done before getting a federal grant?
Who would like to field that? Val or Michelle? Christine?
Yeah, can we actually
Michelle.
can we actually ask a follow-up question in regard to what federal agency you would be applying to, or maybe what industry of grant opportunity you'd be applying for?
They wrote in and said DOE or DOT.
Great, thank you very much. Michelle, any advice on this one?
Yeah, I'd have to take a look at exactly what you're being asked. So it could be related to your indirect cost rate if you already have one. And so I don't know if I have an answer right now, but depending on what you're proposing, certain grants they'll look to validate costs. So if you're proposing specific costs for something, they want to make sure that what you're proposing is alignment with certain standards, like on average for those types of costs. So it could be related to that. So I would need more information about, what your project is, what the grant is. Our team would be happy to take a look at that and do some sense making with you on that one.
Great. Do we have any more questions, Abby?
Yes, we have a couple more. Someone is asking about the bi-weekly meetings. I believe they are referring to the IWG meetings, if we want to highlight that again.
Yeah.
Yes. Christine, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. The biweekly IWG meetings, they are a collaboration of state and federal partners that get together every other Thursday at 11 a.m. And essentially it was developed to be responsive to coal and coal impacted communities, but it has grown since then. Some of our federal partners include the Department of Labor, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Energy. And what they do is they give us a heads up about upcoming opportunities that may become available to Wyoming communities. And they really like to give us and point out this type of information because, as most of you know on this call, some of those notice of funding opportunities, they're only available for 30 or 60 days. So even an additional 3 or 4 days heads up for us, that's beneficial to us. And we are able to collectivify ourselves a little bit better, identify some stakeholders, get letters of support in place, things like that. And then we still have time to develop the grant application. So if you're interested in that, please join us. We have local governments that also join as well. Some of them give, hey, we just got this grant application. We're looking to do this. We have been awarded this money. It's a really, really great collaboration and networking meeting.
Thanks, Christine. And we have worked with our federal partners for 3 years now, over 3 years now, and the relationship has been invaluable. And if you've got questions or there's things you don't know how to answer on a federal grant application, they're happy to work through that with you as well. So we encourage you to get on our distribution list. And if you can't make those meetings, we do send out an update after those meetings, and they're all posted on our website with the Grants Management Office. Other questions, Abby?
Yes, someone is asking, are startup companies eligible for these grants as long as the required systems are established?
Val?
I can take that one. Yes, they are. startup businesses, small businesses. We didn't mention you guys, but for sure, they're the funding so each grant application funder will identify who the eligible applicants can be. So you just have to check that to make sure that businesses or for-profit entities are applicable. Sometimes the ecosystem of funding available for small businesses or startup businesses can be smaller, but if you're very technology based, for example, there's some very great startup grants available for you. So it just depends on your focus and your programming and your products and what have you, but for sure it applies to small businesses and startup businesses also. And I should add that Wyoming in particular has a really strong small business ecosystem that we have great partnerships with. So depending on what, again, your services are, your products or technologies, what have you, we can also put you in touch with the appropriate small business partner that can help.
Yep, and Val.
Thanks, Val. Christine, did you have something to add?
Yes, specifically speaking to what Val said, we can do warm handoffs to the regional representative for the Wyoming Small Business Development Center, as well as some of our other state enterprise stakeholders as well that we include in monthly meetings to let them know about the technical assistance requests that are coming through the grants management office. But the Small Business Development Center, they have a very, very vast network, and if you have not already spoke to a representative from there, I would advocate that you do so.
Thank you, Christine. So Abby, I think we have time for another question if there is one.
We can just close on this one. Is additional support available for organizations looking to improve their grant readiness?
Oh my gosh, everybody should answer that question. Who would like to field it? Michelle, take it away.
Yes, absolutely. So the YGAP team, this is exactly why we're here. We want to build grants management capacity in Wyoming. We want to build the knowledge, skills, and abilities among Wyoming's nonprofits and communities to do this work, to get our fair share of grants in Wyoming. So yes, the checklist, the tool that Val talked about today will be available. Go through that, sit with it, talk to your board, talk to your teams, talk to your directors, go through that and be realistic. It's okay if you aren't doing that great in some spots, but that's fine. You might have grants, and this may highlight some areas that you can work on. And like I said before, you may be better off than you thought you were, and vice versa, and our team will meet you wherever you are, and that's okay. So yes, we can chat with you, talk about what may be needed. And like I said, with the definition of capacity building, it's just whatever that looks like for your organization to get you to whatever that next step is. So our team is happy to support those efforts and get you guys the information you need to do this work well.
Yep. And
Thank you.
oh, one more thing, Drew. I'm so sorry. That grant readiness rubric, to Michelle's point, it's okay that if you're not very strong in certain areas, don't think of it as, oh, this is a weakness. I'm getting slapped on the wrist. No. This is an area for you to improve, and it's a tool that we're putting out there so that you can improve what is going on in your organization. So when you get to, say, a grant audit, you can feel okay, and you don't have sweat on the back of your neck when the auditor is coming into the room and asking you for documentation, etc. So just use the tool. Don't feel like you're doing anything wrong. We are here to help, and we have the services to help.
Thanks, Christine. And I would just add to all of that, please use us. The governor stood this up because he recognized that we needed resources and capacity to assist everybody. And so please use our resources. We had some great talent with the Haggerty team, and we're happy to work through any of these issues with you. As a friendly reminder also, we do several webinars. We've done probably at least one a month since we started. They are all recorded and they are all on the website. So please turn to the website to look through those to see if there's any that could help you. Christine, I'm going to turn to you. Can you discuss next steps? And then we'll end the program.
Yes, sure. So next Wednesday at 10 a.m., we're going to have an office hour. So if you have any follow-up questions from today's webinar or even a previous webinar that we have hosted, Please bring your questions. Even if it's a grant specific question, bring it. We would love to answer it. Come chat with us. We have some state departments that also attend those office hours as well. If you haven't already heard about the Wyoming Funding Summit, please go out on our website. We have a Wyoming Funding Summit page. Review it. If you're interested, register. This event gets bigger and bigger every single year. We are really excited to be able to put this effort on this year in Riverton. And if you have not already done so, please sign up for our Grants Management Office newsletter. Or the biweekly IWG. Just send us an email to sbd-grants@wyo.gov. And as always, please submit a technical assistance request if you need to. We're here to help. You heard Drew Palmer say this is exactly why the governor stood up this office. So we are more than excited to be able to support you in your efforts. And with that, Drew, I think we're at the 11 o'clock mark, so we can close down.
We are. All right. The governor and our team sincerely appreciate your time this morning, and we look forward to hearing from you and working with you on your individual projects and your communities across the state. Thank you for spending your time with us today.
Stay warm, everyone. Thank you.